Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and before we even get into this powerful and history-shaping story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this video far and wide so that nobody misses what's unfolding. This is not just another political event, this is the moment Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa steps into the global spotlight at the United Nations General Assembly, and the ripples of his presence are already being felt across diplomatic circles, African leadership networks, and even in the corridors of Washington, Beijing, and Brussels. The air around New York is buzzing with anticipation because this year's UNGA is taking place at a time when the world is in deep geopolitical tension, from wars raging in Europe and the Middle East, to climate disasters, to growing calls for a reshaping of the world's economic system. And into this high-pressure global stage walks Mnangagwa, determined to project an image of Zimbabwe as a nation that refuses to be sidelined. From the moment his motorcade arrived, security was tight, cameras flashed, and journalists jostled to get a glimpse of the Zimbabwean leader whose country has been a point of both controversy and admiration. On one hand, Zimbabwe is still battling economic turbulence, sanctions, and political disputes. On the other hand, it stands as one of the most resilient nations in southern Africa, surviving decades of pressure from global powers and navigating transitions that would have crushed other states. For Mnangagwa, this is more than just a speech, this is a diplomatic offensive, a chance to reset Zimbabwe's image, build new alliances, and make the case for Africa's right to a fair seat at the global table. When he finally took to the podium, his voice carried both defiance and calculated diplomacy. He spoke with the weight of a man who knows his country has been marginalized in international finance, yet also with the tone of a leader seeking to be taken seriously as a partner in global solutions. He called out the continued imposition of sanctions on Zimbabwe, describing them as unjust, illegal, and a violation of international principles. He made it clear that the sanctions are not just political tools, but weapons that harm ordinary Zimbabweans, stifling development and crushing opportunities for millions. His words echoed a sentiment shared by many African leaders, who have long argued that punitive measures from powerful nations often serve more to punish populations than to promote reform. But Mnangagwa didn't just come to complain, he came to present Zimbabwe as a nation ready to engage, ready to contribute, and ready to lead in areas where it has unique strengths. He highlighted the country's rich agricultural potential, its vast mineral wealth, and its growing energy projects, especially in the renewable sector. He reminded the assembly that Zimbabwe is not asking for handouts, but for partnerships that are mutually beneficial. It was a clear attempt to pivot the narrative from one of dependence to one of opportunity, to show the world that Zimbabwe can be an active participant in solving global crises, not just a passive recipient of aid. The moment that seemed to catch the most attention in the chamber was when Mnangagwa spoke about global inequality in decision-making. He joined the growing African chorus demanding reform of the United Nations Security Council, saying it was unacceptable for the world's power structure to be frozen in the politics of the 1940s. His call for Africa to have permanent representation on the council was met with applause from several delegations, a rare sign of public agreement in a forum often filled with diplomatic silence. It was a bold statement, signaling that Zimbabwe's leader was aligning himself with a larger African agenda to shake up the status quo in international governance. Outside the formal speeches, Mnangagwa's presence in New York was equally calculated. He held bilateral meetings with leaders from both the global south and the global north, quietly working the corridors of diplomacy. There were whispers of private talks with Chinese and Russian envoys, as well as engagements with Middle Eastern investment groups eyeing Zimbabwe's mining and infrastructure sectors. At the same time, sources suggest he sought to soften relations with Western players, signaling that while Zimbabwe will not bow to pressure, it is open to dialogue, if it is conducted in respect and mutual benefit. This balancing act between East and West is not new for Zimbabwe, but Mnangagwa seems intent on playing it more strategically, using the UNGA as a platform to show that Harare can be both independent and cooperative. Back home, reactions to his UN appearance were deeply divided. Supporters praised his speech as strong, unapologetic, and necessary, saying it showed Zimbabwe will not be bullied by bigger powers. They argued that for too long, Zimbabwe's narrative has been shaped by outsiders, and this was a chance to reclaim the story. Critics, however, were less impressed, accusing him of painting a picture abroad that does not match the realities on the ground. They pointed to ongoing economic hardship, political tensions, and human rights concerns, arguing that speeches in New York will mean little without tangible reforms at home. Yet even among critics, there was acknowledgement that the world stage matters, and that Zimbabwe being visible at such a high-profile event is an opportunity that could open doors if followed up effectively. The symbolism of Mnangagwa at the UNGA cannot be underestimated. This is a platform where leaders shape narratives, where alliances are tested, and where visibility translates into influence. For Zimbabwe, a country that has spent years fighting against isolation, this is a moment to be noticed, not just by governments, but by investors, humanitarian agencies, and global media. It's a reminder that despite its challenges, Zimbabwe is still very much a player in the global arena, and its leadership is determined to be heard. As the week of meetings, side events, and negotiations continues, the real test will be whether Mnangagwa's words turn into tangible outcomes. Will sanctions relief discussions gain traction? Will new partnerships be forged that bring investment and jobs back home? Will Zimbabwe's voice in the reform of global governance find real momentum? These are questions that will not be answered in a single speech, but in the follow-up actions that come in the weeks and months ahead. For now, what is clear is that Mnangagwa has stepped onto the world stage with a clear message: Zimbabwe will not be ignored, it will not be dictated to, and it will fight for its place in shaping the future of the world. And so, as the lights of New York shine on the UN headquarters, and as leaders from every corner of the globe make their case, Zimbabwe has made sure its flag is not just flying, but flying boldly. Whether the world chooses to listen is another matter, but no one can say they didn't hear.